The Sports Town Podcast.
Hey guys, it's JJ Peters. Thanks so much for listening to the Sports Town Podcast. We can't thank you enough. Whether you're listening on an audio platform such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, we can't thank you enough. Don't forget to rate the podcast if you have not. It would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you're watching on YouTube or listening, which you probably are, that's where most of the traffic comes from, don't forget to subscribe if you have not. Hit the bell for notifications so you'll be updated when we release new videos. Also, don't forget to, or feel free to comment and like the videos that you have not liked. It goes a very long way. And again, we can't thank you enough. Also, don't forget we're doing the Giannis City Jersey giveaway. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is follow us on Instagram at sportstown_podcast and like any of the videos, and of course, screenshot for proof so I know that you are following me and that you did all the things that you need just to enter. Now, there's up to 4 entries. I'm not going to tell it right now. All you just go to Instagram sportstown_podcast and check that out. So anyways, that's going to be great. Can't wait. I think it ends August 31st at 1 a.m. Eastern. On today's Sportstown podcast, we have 2 great interviews. The first interview, we have a returning guest, Nicely, from the Ball Fake podcast to talk about the NBA draft, NBA free agency, and what's happened so far in the NBA. I don't think we talked about the Olympics, but again, congratulations to USA for winning their 4th straight gold medal. That's just great. A dynasty, even though people aren't going to necessarily talk about it unless they would have lost. But again, I'm very thankful that the USA was able to pull away and win their 4th straight gold medal. And then, of course, that was a great interview. Don't forget to check out the Ball Fake podcast. They're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can also follow them on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok at Ball Fake Podcast. That was a great interview. Don't forget to check them out. Then we have a new guest from the Bears, Birds, and Brews podcast to talk about the NFL season so far, Aaron Rodgers, and what's to come elsewhere in the NFL. Again, we haven't talked about football in a very long time just because it's finally back. The preseason game happened on Thursday, or the Hall of Fame game between the Cowboys and Steelers. It was kind of boring, but let's be honest, it's a Hall of Fame game. It's not necessarily supposed to be. None of the starters really played. So anyways, again, check that out. It was a great interview. You can check out the Bears, Birds, and Brews podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can also follow them on Instagram and Twitter, and I believe you can also check them out on Facebook. I'll leave a description I'll leave a link in the description down below. And then, as always, we have the Sports Lightning Round, questions from Instagram, highlight of the week, a weekly poll question, and much more. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at sportstown_podcast and on Twitter at sportstownpod. Let's get the episode underway. Before we start today's episode, I'd like to give a quick shout to our sponsor of today's video, and that sponsor is our good friends over at helpyoufind.me. You're probably asking yourself, JJ, what is helpyoufind.me? Well, I'll tell you what it is. Peter Sanchez, the founder, creator, and owner, was originally worried about his daughter and his mom always asking him for his travel details. Helpyoufind.me was initially created for collective peace of mind. 48 hours. These are the most critical moments to find you in the event of an emergency, or worse, waiting for the legal process to access your important history information, which can take up to weeks upon weeks upon weeks. With helpyoufind.me, you have your own secure and encrypted digital If I Go Missing file that can give you your most trusted people access to virtual information much sooner than the authorities. Each person you share with that has its own access rules, and everything is completely encrypted. Not even helpyoufind.me can access it. This puts you in total control of your data. You can also update your location, submit photos, screenshots, and post random information or notes on the go. It's as easy as texting with a friend. To find out more information, go to helpyoufind.me. Also, don't forget to use the promo code down below in my description. If you use the promo code STP2021 to get 15% off your first order. Again, that promo code is STP2021 to get 15% off your first order. And if you want more information, go to helpyoufind.me. And again, I'll put the link down in the description down below. All right, let's get back to the show. And now it's on to our weekly poll question. Now, remember, you can vote on Instagram and Facebook at sportsdown_podcast or on Twitter at sportsdownpod. The first question, of course, was who do you think has a better chance of making the playoffs, the Cowboys or the Steelers? Overwhelmingly, you guys said the Steelers, which I agree with. There's a good chance, though, I think that both teams could miss the playoffs. Every year, I'm always doubtful with what the Cowboys can do. Every year, it seems like they're supposed to be a playoff contender, but they usually don't get it done. So in my opinion, the Cowboys do not make the playoffs. I think there's a good chance the Steelers don't either, with how good their division is and how good the AFC is this year. And with what the Steelers really didn't do much in the offseason. Ben Roethlisberger is a year older. He was not good last year, especially toward the end. So I don't really like the Steelers making the playoffs either. But if I had a choice, I would take the Steelers over the Cowboys just because I can't trust the Cowboys. But again, thanks for voting on that one. The second question was, what was your favorite part of the Olympics? I was getting some gymnastics. I was getting some basketball. But I think the number one thing that we got was track and field, which makes a lot of sense. I'm surprised I didn't get that much swimming up. I didn't get that much swimming, but track and field ends up winning the vote. Not really surprised by that, but at the same time, it's like I thought I would get more votes from the swimming. Now, my favorite was probably the basketball, but it usually is. And also, I was glad to see baseball back. However, I'm not sure they're having baseball again in France in 2024, which is kind of disappointing. But again, congrats to Japan, who defeated U.S. for the gold at the Olympics in baseball. All right, again, thanks for voting on Instagram and Facebook. You can vote every week at sports_podcast on Instagram and Facebook, or on Twitter at sportsdownpod. And now on to the sports lightning round.
This is the highlight of the week.
Ground ball to third. What a play by Clement. Throws off balance. Bobby Bradley. What a stretch. Amazing on both ends. Well, go figure. He's going to have...
All right, what a play from Ernie Clement and Bobby Bradley of the Cleveland Indians, or should I say the Cleveland Guardians? Well, they're still the Indians for now, but at least they'll be in the Guardians next season. The Indians would get it done on Monday, a few days ago, to defeat the Tigers 5-1. At the time of this recording, they are 54-55. They still have a chance to win the AL Central, but it's going to be tough with how good the White Sox are currently. But again, what a play from Ernie Clement and Bobby Bradley. Cleveland Indians still trying to get a chance to win that division, or at least make the playoffs, which is going to be very hard, with especially how good the American League is. But again, it was a great play, and I love seeing those type of plays in professional baseball. And now on to our interview with the Ball Fake Podcast. Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by Nicely from the Ball Fake Podcast, a returning guest. How's it going, Nicely?
Not too bad. And yourself, JJ?
I'm doing great. Especially after USA held off to beat France yesterday. Now, at the time of this recording, it was Saturday. But before we start talking about the NBA draft and free agency, if you want to talk more about your podcast, I know you mentioned it before in your last time, but just to kind of refresh the people who are listening to this podcast.
Yeah, we talk about basketball on our podcast. We're an NBA podcast specifically, but we also cover some college athletics as well. And, anything revolving around basketball, typically, we might have some episodes where we might talk about a high school basketball player. I expect to do that this upcoming season. But other than that, the name kind of speaks for itself, Ball Fake Podcast, basically everything revolving around basketball.
Okay. Yeah, because I think last time you came over, I think it was during I can't remember if it was the conference finals or the NBA finals, but we had a pretty good conversation, and it was, I enjoyed it a lot. So, and now as we jump onto the NBA draft, of course, Cade Cunningham goes number 1 overall. How well do you think he'll do in his first year in Detroit? Because it seems like everybody, like in any type of sport in general, everybody goes to die when they go to Detroit. How well do you think Cade Cunningham will do with the Pistons in his first year?
I think he'll keep his head above water. This is a guy, he's got do-it-all ability. He can play inside, he can play outside, got phenomenal passing ability. He's going to be an astronomical passer at the next level. And I think, the Detroit Pistons, they have a roster that's good enough for him to operate. Maybe they make it to the postseason. Not exactly sure just yet. We still have to see who else they add in free agency and, the rest of this offseason and everything. But I feel like Cade Cunningham has a very bright future in Detroit.
Yeah, and it seemed like at first I was just shocked that Detroit got the number 1 overall pick, because almost in every draft lottery they always get screwed, them and the Knicks, it seems like. Right. But I think Cade Cunningham's going to be really good. Do you think he'll win Rookie of the Year this year?
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be the front runner. I mean, I like guys like Jaylen Green, Jalen Suggs, even Scottie Barnes out of Toronto. But I think Cade Cunningham will definitely run away with it. I mean, he's probably got the best fit as far as like in correlation with his game compared to all the other lottery picks and prospects throughout this entire NBA draft. But yeah, I think Cade Cunningham definitely runs away with it.
Who do you think Cade Cunningham in the NBA today, who do you think he resembles the most?
I mean, there's actually a number of comparisons you can throw out there. I mean, we've all heard a lot about Luka Doncic and everything, but I think he takes a little bit of bits and pieces from, a ton of guys. I think he's got a little bit of Chris Middleton to his game. Not very athletic, but he does his due diligence when it comes to scoring the basketball. And then obviously we talked about Luka Doncic, that comparison. I think those guys have similarities when it comes to their passing ability. And then I think he doesn't necessarily play like Jason Tatum to a certain degree, but I think there are hints in, areas in his game that could be similar. And then I feel like he also has a similar body type. Whenever he fills up his body when it comes to, strength and conditioning and everything, I think we're going to see the similarities there. But I mean, Cade Cunningham, he's going to be a phenomenal prospect in his first year in the NBA.
Yeah, I think if he can resemble any of those, at least early in his career, if he can just resemble some of those, or at least half of what those players are, because if he does that, the Pistons will be somewhat good. And of course, they have to give him some talent. He doesn't have a lot of options right now, but I feel like maybe in a few years, the Pistons, if they surround the right talent around Cade Cunningham, they can be good and maybe be contenders in the East.
Could you see them making a postseason this year by any chance?
I don't think so. I know the East isn't as good as the West, but I just can't really see the Pistons. I think they're still a year or two away from actually making it. But I think it's going to be a few years before they actually get into the playoffs. And of course, it'll be a few years after that until they can contenders. It just depends on what they can do in free agency, I think. So if you can actually lure people to Detroit, which is going to be hard. So
right.
And speaking of Jaylen Green, we just mentioned him. A lot of people think he could be the Rookie of the Year, and a lot of people were very hyped. Of course, he didn't go to college. He went straight to the G League, which is probably going to end up happening a lot more now. But what do you think about his potential? And I know the Rockets are similar to the Pistons. They don't have a lot of options right now. But how well do you think Jaylen Green will do in his first year in the NBA?
I think he should definitely excel, especially if, they defer to him in a lot of moments. When it comes to looking at their roster, it is a little bit weird to a certain degree. I mean, you still have John Wall there. I think that's the reason why, they ended up selecting Jaylen Green, just because he'd probably be a better fit alongside John Wall, even though he's probably not going to be a long-term person that stays in that organization. But I think Jaylen Green definitely has the talent to, keep his head above water his first year, might make a lot of noise. Maybe we could see a potential positive rebuild in Houston, because we already know Houston has had a lot of problems these last couple of seasons when it comes to, just decision making and their overall play. So, but I think Jaylen Green can be the one bright spot in their season next year.
Yeah, and I think, and I mentioned this on my last episode of the podcast, or I had some guests came on, but do you think John Wall will be traded from Houston? Because it seems like he's going to. I originally, before Russell Westbrook was traded to the Lakers, I thought I could see John Wall going to the Lakers. But what do you think about John Wall's future?
It's very risky. I'm not sure any team is really all that high on a guy like John Wall. I mean, I'm not sure how many years he has left on his contract. That is going to play a really big part in him, getting traded to another organization. But I honestly couldn't see any team trying to, take on that contract. Once again, I don't remember how many years is left on his contract and how much money is left, but there's not going to be too many people that are in need of a guy like John Wall.
Yeah, injuries are definitely a concern, but if you look at his stats, they're pretty good. I mean, he's a top 10 point guard. I mean, he's not top 5 because there's just so many good point guards in the league. But if you really look at John Wall's stats, they're impressive. But yeah, the injury concern, I'm not exactly sure how much he has left in his contract either. I just think he's going to end up getting traded before the season starts, but I'm not really sure what team would look for him, because I think a lot of people already have their point guard position already, filled, but we'll see. Back with Jaylen Green, who do you think he reminds you of the most in the NBA today?
I would have to go with Zach LaVine. I mean, the combination of being a scorer and, tying that in with his athleticism, him being able to, do a lot during the transition opportunities and, things of that nature. I think Zach LaVine is definitely a guy that, really comes to mind when it comes to, an NBA comparison for Jaylen Green. I mean, those two, they have a lot of similarities. Both of them are the franchise player. for the next couple of years for their organization. But, I mean, I don't think there's too many guys that can emulate what Jaylen Green's able to do on the basketball court. I mean, I've seen some comparisons with Bradley Beal. Maybe when it comes to shot creation to a certain degree, he might have a few similarities. But I think Zach LaVine is a much better NBA comparison.
Yeah, and I think – I mean, it's going to be interesting with Jaylen Green. I didn't see a whole lot of – the only really stuff I saw from Jaylen Green was highlights on YouTube. I really didn't watch any of his games, but I feel like a lot of people are saying that he's got a really big upside, and if he can just be solid in his first year, because, again, similar to Cade Cunningham, you know, he's not going to have a lot of options if John Wall does end up getting traded. But we'll definitely see what happens there in Houston because, again, they're going to be in for a long rebuild as well. Now we go to Evan Mobley, and Mobley seems like a guy that will either have a really good career or just a really bad career. Where do you think Mobley ranks? And, I mean, is there a chance for him to eventually make an all-star team?
I mean, when it comes to Evan Mobley, he's one of the prospects that I really wasn't all that high on heading into this year's draft, just simply because I didn't think he had much of a winning impact when it comes to USC, what he did in college. And, you know, that kind of strikes me, especially when, you know, this is a guy that can potentially be a lottery pick. There also is going to be a few questions defensively. I think he can be a great shot blocker at the next level. But when it comes to posterior defense, I think he could really struggle. Guys like Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, you know, they can really light him up on the opposing side of the basketball. And he probably won't really have those opportunities to guard players like that too much in his rookie year. But outside of that, Evan Mobley, he is a decent player, but I don't really know if he really moves the needle all that much when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers' future, to be honest with you.
He kind of came out of nowhere, I feel like, because, again, USC isn't known for their basketball, but they had a really good season last year. They went to the Sweet 16. Of course, they ended up getting knocked out by UCLA, who made the Final Four, but I feel like he came out of nowhere, and I just, especially with the Cavs, I mean, it's really debatable with Mobley. Do you think there's a chance? I mean, I think the Cavs, again, similar to the Pistons and similar to the Rockets, they're a few years away. But do you think the Cavs can actually make the playoffs next season?
No way, no how. No way, no how. There's no way. I mean, maybe we give them a shot at the play-in tournament. Let's see. The coaching is a question. Also, you know, those players, I just don't feel like they're ready just yet. I mean, you got guys like Darius Garland that are still a work in progress. Jarrett Allen just got traded there. Isaac Okoro, he'll be heading into his sophomore season. And then you still have guys like Kevin Love on the roster. So I mean, I'm not really sure, but I definitely don't think this is a team that's playoff ready just yet, especially with, you know, the issues with Colin Sexton in the locker room. I've said it in the past on other podcasts that I felt like this guy was a cancer in the locker room, and ultimately it ended up being true to a certain degree. But I just can't see Cleveland being in the postseason next year. It's just far too soon to think like that.
Yeah, I think they're at least a year or two away. I know we'll probably talk a little about this when we get to talking about free agency, but Kevin Love, it seems like every year, even every time there's a trade, he seems like he's out of Cleveland, but yet he's still there. Do you think Love will be traded before the season begins?
Probably not. I think there was even something about him talking about he wanted to be there long term. So I think that's definitely out of the window. But let's say there was a scenario where he did request a trade. I think a team like Portland could benefit having him. I mean, the only problem is Portland is an organization that tends to be really cheap. So I doubt that they want to take on that contract. But I think that would be a good fit for him if he were to, you know, be in trade rumors.
It just seems like Kevin Love, every time there's a trade, they're like, oh, he could go here, he could go there. I think even at one time he was projected to go to the Lakers, and it just seems like I think he kind of likes Cleveland, to be honest with you. He kind of likes that situation he's in. I mean, of course, he's more of a mentor than really a star player now because he's getting older, and it seems like he gets injured a lot more. But again, we'll see what happens. Now we go to the 4th overall pick. The Raptors kind of shocked some people by not taking Jalen Suggs. They took Scottie Barnes instead. What do you think about Barnes' future in the NBA?
Man, I love Scottie Barnes. I love his game. I mean, FSU guys, I'm really big on them because, you know, they are phenomenal defensively. And I think Toronto recognized that. Now, you can make the case that Jalen Suggs is just as good defensively as well. But I think, you know, with them making a lot of rumors about being high on Scottie Barnes heading up into the draft, especially after his draft workout, it was no surprise to me too much that, you know, they selected him. I feel like the reason why they selected him specifically over Suggs, though, is because that somehow, some way, they probably see a generational talent. And, you know, they just felt like he was probably the better pick within, you know, the entire organization. So I think Scottie Barnes has a bright future in Toronto.
And it seems like the Raptors are in complete rebuild mode. They got rid of Kyle Lowry. Of course, Kawhi is out. He's been out for a while. DeMar DeRozan's been gone for a while. And it feels like Pascal Siakam is that next guy to go. But what do you think about the Raptors? What do you think they'll do in the next few years? Because I feel like they're, feels like they're kind of back to what they were, in 20 or in the early 2010s when they were kind of in rebuild mode. What do you think the Raptors need to do to get back to what they were just a few years ago?
Man, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously you're going to have to draft well, probably make a few trades here and there. I mean, they have a lot of valuable pieces on that roster, but I just can't really pinpoint what Toronto exactly is trying to do. I mean, they signed Gary Trent Jr. He tends to be a hidden gem now that he's no longer crippled within that Portland Trailblazers offense. But I mean, there's really no telling because you kind of feel like, okay, they seem like they're going young and they want to, develop some of these younger guys on that roster. But we also hear that, they're trying to make pushes for guys like Ben Simmons in the offseason trades and stuff. So, I mean, there's really just no telling. But I trust a guy like Masai Ujiri, he's made the right decisions throughout his entire tenure being under the Toronto Raptors organization. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Now, you just mentioned Masai Ujiri. He's back in Toronto. He just re-signed with the Raptors. And it seems like every few years there's a chance that he either leaves or stays or something like that. But do you think, and we all know Ujiri has done an excellent job with the Raptors. He helped them win a championship back in 2019. He made the bold move of trading DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard. Do you think he should be, in a few years, considered, for the NBA Hall of Fame just because of what he's done with the Raptors?
I think you can definitely consider it. Anytime you win hardware in the NBA, you definitely have to be considered for the, NBA Hall of Fame. I mean, look at a guy like Tony Kukoc. He was just elected into the Hall of Fame. I think this past year, actually, and you look at his offensive numbers, they weren't necessarily great. They don't really jump off the page for you, but it's just it's really about the impact that, he's had on that organization. And then, when it comes to Masai Ujiri, he's definitely had a positive one for the most part. So, yeah, I would consider him an NBA Hall of Famer for sure.
Yeah, because just a few years ago when they made that move to trade away DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi, and it was more of a one-year rental, and of course they acquired Danny Green as well. Like, the Raptor fans were not happy, all that stuff, and a year later they hold the title. And there were some things with the Warriors, but still they were able to win that championship and beat the Sixers and beat the Bucks on their way to beating the Warriors in the finals. So I definitely think Ujiri should be somewhere in the consideration. And he's done an excellent job. Now, as we round up the top five, the Orlando Magic, I believe, got a steal in Jalen Suggs. I really like Suggs, especially after coming out of Gonzaga. But what did the Orlando Magic exactly get with Jalen Suggs?
I mean, they got a hard worker. They got a guy that's going to come in. He's going to have an impact from day one. He's going to, spread that winning culture. One thing we know about Jalen Suggs, he's won at every single level, high school, almost college, I would say. But, other than that, I really love Jalen Suggs as an athlete. I think he can bring a lot within that organization. Only question is, what does the rotation look like? Who are going to be the guys for, the foreseeable future? Because we know they signed Markelle Fultz to a contract extension, I think, the beginning of last season. And then you draft Cole Anthony, and you just traded for a guy in RJ Hampton. So, I mean, it could be a little bit messy on the perimeter at the guard spot. But other than that, I think Jalen Suggs, he can have a phenomenal impact for the Orlando Magic here in the near future.
I kind of forgot about Cole Anthony, but I know he had a solid season. But with Jalen Suggs being in Orlando, I think he doesn't have as much pressure because even though Toronto, again, wasn't expected to be great, I think he has more pressure there than he does in Orlando. And I think there's a good chance that he could win the Rookie of the Year. And I think his biggest opponents for that would be, of course, Cade Cunningham and Jaylen Green. But I definitely think Jalen Suggs has a very good chance of winning Rookie of the Year. And, finally, because the Orlando Magic are also in rebuilding mode. They traded away, Vucevic. They traded away Gordon. They traded Fournier. And it seems like, they're completely in rebuild. But I think there's a good chance for Jalen Suggs that he'll be very successful in Orlando. And we'll see what they do elsewhere because, of course, they're going to need a big man. But it's going to take them a few years before they can get back into that playoff mode. Now, as we switch gears to free agency, what shocked you the most about the first day of free agency of which player went where? What shocked you the most?
Man, oh my God, I don't know where to start, but probably Lonzo Ball to Chicago. I mean, you stick in a California type of guy in, the Windy City. I didn't see that coming whatsoever. I mean, leading up to this point, we heard so many rumors about New York. Maybe he re-signs with New Orleans. And I actually kind of felt like he would re-sign with New Orleans, just given the fact that, he's got a pretty good relationship with most of the guys on the roster. He's really close to Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, just guys like that, Josh Hart as well. But Chicago, I mean, they're definitely getting a steal. I mean, this is a guy that he's got the ability to, really facilitate at a high level for the most part, average north of 6 assists. He's going to improve your backcourt in the defense. We know that's one of the biggest problems that Chicago's been dealing with, these last couple of years. Kobe White and Zach LaVine hasn't really got the job done these last few seasons. But ultimately, I think Lonzo Ball, he'll be a phenomenal fit in Chicago.
Yeah, and I was a little shocked by that. I wasn't necessarily shocked about Kyle Lowry going to Miami because we all knew Lowry was out the door. But the Lonzo situation, I originally thought he might go to the Hornets to pair up with his brother. And there seemed like there would be a trade for Devontae Graham for Lonzo Ball. But I definitely think the Bulls, they should be in that somewhere in that they should make the playoffs this year. And of course, there's no excuses because now they have, Zach LaVine, they got Lonzo, they got Vucevic, now they brought in DeMar DeRozan. So the Bulls seem like they're contenders now, and they should at least be somewhere in the top 5 in the East, especially with how open the Eastern Conference is.
Can I say something real quick about the Hornets?
Yeah.
Because I don't understand how that really works. I mean, we know that Lonzo and LaMelo and Jello, they all played in high school, obviously. But when you're Lonzo Ball and you're put in a situation in New Orleans where you're playing off ball, you're probably going to be in the same situation to a certain degree when you go to the Hornets because LaMelo Ball, he's going to be the guy that's running the show. He's a much better ball handler, probably a better decision maker, and, he's definitely the better passer between the two. I mean, we saw the crazy passes that he was able to pull off. I mean, he's so comfortable in the pick and roll. There's so many scenarios where LaMelo Ball is just better than Lonzo Ball at the point guard position. So I didn't really see that making too much sense. I mean, obviously, like we said, they played in high school together. They're brothers, I mean, for Christ's sake. But I just didn't think that made much sense.
Yeah, I didn't really know how much or how well it would work together. I just saw there was a lot of, information where the Hornets were interested in trading for him. And I'm not sure exactly how interested LaMelo was to pair up with his brother. And it seemed like Lonzo wasn't super interested, but it was just kind of a thing that I thought might happen. But I definitely think, Lonzo makes more sense in Chicago, to be honest with you. But it was just kind of I just kind of thought that maybe it would happen just because of all the rumors, but at the end of the day, we'll never find out because, of course, he signs in Chicago.
Right.
Now let's go on to another kind of not really a shocker to be perhaps I just kind of mentioned, but Kyle Lowry to Miami. What did you think about that move?
Seems like he fits Heat culture. I mean, this is a guy, he's got the winning mentality, winning culture. I mean, he just won the championship not too long ago with the Toronto Raptors. I think he can be a really good piece right next to, guys like Duncan Robinson, PJ Tucker, Jimmy Butler. I mean, you name it, everybody else that they signed in free agency and, this offseason. But, I think Kyle Lowry, he definitely is going to improve, the perimeter defense, similar to what Lonzo Ball brings to Chicago, because we know Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero, those two really get picked on, specifically in the postseason. When the game slows down and everything, and guys are trying to pick out matchups and stuff. So I think they'll benefit from having a guy that leads the NBA in charges, is a defensive anchor at the point guard position, and brings in facilitating skills while also being around, I believe, a 20-point scorer per game. So Kyle Lowry, definitely an A+ if you're the Miami Heat.
Yeah, and I think I originally thought Kyle Lowry would maybe go to the Clippers just because he had connections with Kawhi Leonard and Serge Ibaka. But I think Miami does make a little more sense for him just because I felt like the Heat had a lot more money than the Clippers did. And of course, he's got a great relationship with Jimmy Butler. Where do you think, and I know Victor Oladipo is returning to play with the Heat, but where does he fit in this offense? Because it seems like, or this team, because it feels like he's kind of the odd man out in this situation.
Yeah, I think he definitely will be. I mean, there may be some scenarios where, they look for him to score at the end of the shot clock. I know they typically did that a lot with Jimmy Butler, and that kind of hurt his game to a certain degree last season. But maybe there could be some bright spots. But ultimately, I think he just has to get on the court first. I mean, this is a guy that's been in and out of, seasons with injuries and everything. So we really just kind of have to see where he is durable-wise. But ultimately, maybe he can be spark late for them in the postseason or something. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think he was really good in Indiana, and after he's had so many injuries, which is kind of disappointing because he's such a good player, and I feel like we still haven't seen the full Victor Oladipo just because he's been injured so much. And I think he's on his 4th or 5th NBA team, which is kind of sad a little bit. But
right.
It's going to be weird to see when he comes back on the court how well he works with the Heat, because, again, they already have Kyle Lowry. They already have Tyler Hero. They already have, Jimmy Butler and Duncan Robinson. So it's just going to be kind of different to see where he actually fits in this lineup. Could you see him possibly getting traded if it just doesn't work out?
Yeah, definitely. The thing is, for what though? I mean, we feel like Victor Oladipo holds a lot of value, but it's definitely been diminished due to, his injury history and everything. Maybe you can find a desperate team like maybe Boston. I'm not sure. Maybe, Boston will want to give up a few of their assets to, bring in Victor Oladipo. We know Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown definitely need help. Not sure exactly how well that would fit, so to speak. I'm just throwing ideas out there. Maybe New York possibly wants him as well in a trade. I'm not really sure, but I just don't. I mean, I would love to see him out of Miami, to be honest with you, because I don't want to see the headache of, Miami trying to fit him in within their offense. And then defensively, he's not really, that competent when it comes to, everybody else on that roster. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I think, New York does make a lot of sense, too, just because what they did this offseason was just weird to bring in Kimball Walker. Of course, we were talking about that before we started recording, but it was just kind of weird what New York did. And, yeah, probably if they were desperate enough, they would try to see if they could make a trade for Victor Oladipo. Now, another guy that re-signed was Chris Paul. He re-signed with the Clippers, or not re-signed with the Clippers. He re-signed with the Suns. Were you shocked by that? Because I wasn't necessarily super shocked that he returned to Phoenix.
No, I don't think anybody was shocked by that decision. I mean, he said in his press conference after they lost the NBA Finals, they're going to run it back. So, I mean, obviously, we already knew that there wasn't going to be too many teams that were willing to pay, a 35, 36-year-old Chris Paul, $40 million a year or however much he's making. But I think he can be a good fit in Phoenix once again. Their postseason hopes probably, gets diminished a little bit and decreased, with Golden State being a little bit fully healthy and, the Lakers increasing their roster and their talent on that roster as well. So, I mean, maybe Chris Paul can make it work. Maybe we see another conference finals. Not really sure, but we'll just have to wait and see for that one as well.
Yeah, speaking of the Warriors, they made some news yesterday, or at least on Friday, that they re-signed Andre Iguodala, or they brought him back. He's probably going to be more of a mentor, but where do you see the Warriors where do you see the Warriors doing next year if Klay Thompson is healthy?
I can see this team in the conference finals. Just because I feel like teams like Denver, I feel like they can compete with Denver. Maybe they outshoot them in the series. And, when it comes to the Utah Jazz, I think they're kind of pretenders to a certain degree. I mean, I love Donovan Mitchell. Not the biggest fan of Rudy Gobert, to be honest with you. Joe Ingles, he's a phenomenal player. Royce O'Neal brings a lot of value. And they just re-signed Mike Conley to another 3-year contract, I believe. But I think in comparison to, the rest of the Western Conference, I think the Warriors probably sit atop of that, alongside teams like the Los Angeles Lakers compared to everybody else if they're 100% healthy.
Yeah, I feel like, what they did last year, or at least what Steph Curry did last year, was unbelievable. But, they still didn't make the playoffs. And, if Klay Thompson is 100%, a lot of people were picking them to make the finals or at least be a contender last year before the news that Thompson was going to be out for the second straight year. So the West is going to be even better next year if you get a healthy Klay Thompson. I kind of want to mention this now. Kawhi Leonard re-signed with the Clippers as well. He's probably not going to play at all next year. If they're lucky, he plays a little bit. But the Clippers also re-signed Reggie Jackson, Nicholas Batum, which I think were smart signings. What do you think the Clippers do next season, even without Kawhi Leonard?
I didn't know that they re-signed Reggie Jackson. That's new news to me. Okay, that's good. That's a good signing for them. I mean, obviously, he brought a lot of value this postseason. Definitely erupted in that second round series against the Utah Jazz. It was a big help for them to, move on to their first appearance in the Western Conference Finals. But I think we see more of the same from the Los Angeles Clippers. They didn't really make any signings that really moved the needle too much. Typically because, they're kind of backed up when it comes, they don't really have too many draft picks that they can, offer to teams. Nobody really wants a second round pick for, a valuable all-star. And then I think money-wise, they're definitely over the cap. They don't have the luxury like a team like the Golden State Warriors do when it comes to, being over the cap, because Golden State, I don't know if you know this or not, JJ, but Golden State, they actually own their own stadium. So all the money that, generates from that stadium when it comes to vendors, season ticket sales, things of that nature, all that money goes to the front office. So that's why they're able to, pay 5 times as much in the cap as compared to, other teams. So they're able to get guys like Otto Porter Jr. and, other free agents this offseason. But I don't think there's too much of a progression when it comes to the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard, if he doesn't play in the beginning of the season, which he definitely isn't because, he just tore his ACL, we're probably not going to see him for the rest of the season. I don't think it makes any sense for him to come back in the middle of the season knowing that he's not going to be 100%. And we already know this is a guy that really likes to take care of his body. So I think the Clippers probably digress to a certain degree next year.
Yeah, and I think I just can't see Kawhi playing much, and we're kind of all hearing that there's a very good chance that Leonard misses the whole season. And, of course, as you mentioned, he really likes to take care of his body. So we'll see what the Clippers do. But I do think signing Reggie Jackson, who was great in the postseason last year, him and Paul George was pretty impressive as well. But, yeah, Reggie Jackson was great. Nicholas Batum was a great role player. Not a lot of people really think much. Not really many people think too much about Nicholas Batum, but he was a great role player for him, and he fit that offense or just fit that team really well. So I thought the signings were great. And now, of course, because we're getting close to end the interview, and again, thanks for coming on. But the Knicks, they made some interesting and questionable moves. They signed Kimball Walker. I just don't know how well that's going to work with Derrick Rose, but do you think the Knicks just were desperate to bring in some type of free agent?
Yeah, certainly. I don't know if I have this feeling that they're just trying to hold on to, some of that cap space for next free agency. Maybe that might be the case. But I thought the Kimball Walker signing, it definitely fills some holes to a certain degree offensively. I mean, we know this is a team that struggled to put the ball in the basket last postseason. And, signing Evan Fournier, Kimball Walker, that definitely will help, them from that standpoint. But we also have to kind of look at the contracts. Evan Fournier contract probably overpaid him to a certain degree. And then when it comes to Kimball Walker's injury history, tying him next to a coach like Tom Thibodeau that tends to, kind of run his starters into the ground, not necessarily the perfect match, but maybe he's able to, make this a positive.
Yeah, and I think I forgot about the Tom Thibodeau and Kimball Walker situation. Yeah, as Kimball Walker has not been healthy the last few years, but he's really good when he's healthy. But it seems like the last few years when he went to Boston, he wasn't healthy at all. Of course, he gets traded to OKC, and then we all knew he was going to get traded again. But I really feel like the Knicks just were super desperate this offseason to acquire any type of, player. And, Kimball Walker is an all-star, a former all-star, but it just kind of seems like just the Knicks were super desperate. Another team that didn't really make much moves, and I thought they needed to do something to help out Luka, would have been the Mavs. What do you think the Mavs need to do in order to actually, I know they need to help out Luka, but what do they actually need in terms of helping their superstar?
They need an all-star or all-NBA caliber player right next to Luka Doncic. But because a lot of people talk about Luka Doncic, he's so ball dominant, he doesn't really trust his teammates all that much, which probably is true to a certain degree. But, I mean, when you look at that roster, when you have guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. that you're paying, I think $72 million for the next 4 years, there's something along those lines. And then you have Jalen Brunson in your backcourt as a point guard. I think you're going to be able to make the postseason with those guys, but you're not going to make a huge leap. I mean, Phoenix, we saw them go from outside of the postseason in the past 11 years to, an NBA Finals appearance. Why was that? It wasn't because they just went out and got, any random Joe walking across the street. They signed an all NBA caliber player in Chris Paul. And I think Luka Doncic definitely needs that type of player. I would have liked to see them sign maybe DeMar DeRozan, maybe even Spencer Dinwiddie. You never know. But, I mean, they just need a lot of more perimeter threats on, the Dallas Mavericks in order for them to, really compete in the Western Conference that we know is constantly improving day by day.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the Mavericks are kind of in that same position they were. Now, they did get rid of a few players, but it just seems like they're kind of just kind of the same place they were. And I'm not sure how good Jason Kidd as a coach will be, but it just feels like the Mavs just kind of stayed put, and especially with the Western Conference getting better. And now, at the end of the day, who do you think so far has won free agency, and who do you think has been the biggest loser of free agency?
Winners definitely have to be. I think. Can I pick more than one team? Because I really can't nibble it down to just one. I would have to start off with the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, them trading for Russell Westbrook and, essentially giving up a bag of chips. I like KCP, but, he was hit or miss in the postseason. One moment he scores 1 point, doesn't do anything defensively for you, and then the next night he can basically win the series for you against, a team like the Houston Rockets that he did in the second round last year. But I would also say Chicago are definitely winners. I mean, signing DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, really improving your offense, improving your defense to a certain degree as well. Also getting a guy like Alex Caruso. I thought he was a big signing. You didn't really have to pay too much to get, a valuable role player in him. He's also got championship acumen. He's a winner. So I thought that was a good signing. And obviously, the Miami Heat, they were also really big winners, acquiring guys like Kyle Lowry. PJ Tucker was a humongous signing. I don't know exactly why, Milwaukee wasn't able to match the money that, PJ Tucker was requesting, because I think he was requesting 2 years, $20 million, but Miami signed him for 2 years, $15 million. So there's questions there, but I think Miami's definitely big winners. But as far as losers, can't really think of anybody off the top of my head. I don't really consider anybody to be losers so far. There are some individual players that I think are kind of being left out. Number one, Dennis Schroeder. I mean, not too many teams are really high on him, especially for that asking price, $20 million a year for a guy that, scored 0 points in the postseason last year. Not going to be exactly urging to, sign him in free agency. But I think Dennis Schroeder is probably the only loser in free agency, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah, and it feels like, as you said, the Bulls, big winners. I kind of feel like the Knicks were kind of losers because they didn't really do a whole lot, and they still have a lot of money left in free agency. And maybe they hope that next year they can see if they can bring in Kawhi Leonard, but it just feels like Kawhi Leonard is going to get a massive contract with the Clippers next year. So we'll see what ends up happening. And again, thanks for coming on nicely. Do you have anything in store for the future for your podcast or something like that?
Yeah, I'm trying my hardest to get Jackie Young on our podcast and everything. We know she just won in the Olympics a few weeks ago, and I think it was a 3-on-3 tournament. I didn't even know that was a thing. But yeah, we're trying to basically just get more and more interviews in. College basketball season will be coming up shortly. Still trying to get a few more prospects. We're going to touch bases on the name, image, and likeness when it comes to college basketball, because I know there's a lot of guys signing decent contracts for what they've been able to do for their team and everything. But yeah, that's basically what we have in store. I would just love for you guys to all support me and my co-host Greg King for our podcast and everything, because I actually did drop out just to pursue this, because I was a former sports analyst at the University of Evansville, but I just didn't feel like it was the right path for me. So I would love for you guys to support me for sure.
All right. Again, thanks for coming nicely. You can check out the Ball Fake podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Are you guys on YouTube by chance?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's our primary source.
Okay. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. You can also check them on Instagram and Twitter at Ball Fake Podcast. All right. Thanks again for coming on nicely, and have a wonderful day and enjoy the season when it comes up in October. So
appreciate you, JJ.
The STP Sports Lightning Round. Your biggest sports stories in the world this past week.
Bad news for Mets fans. Mets ace pitcher Jacob deGrom will be out for at least 2 more weeks. According to multiple sources, there is a good chance that the 2-time NL Cy Young Award winner might not pitch for the rest of the season. And worse, the Mets currently trail the Phillies by half a game in the competitive NL East. If New York doesn't win the division, they most likely won't make the postseason as a wild card, with how good the Dodgers and Padres have been this season. Mets manager Luis Rojas told reporters on Friday, saying, "It's good to hear something like slightly improving, but another 2 weeks without throwing is a dagger." DeGrom has said that he's confident he'll return from his forearm injury this season, but I'm not joining him in that confidence, at least not as a starter. The season ends on October 3rd. This season, DeGrom has been excellent. He is 7-2 with a 1.08 ERA, a .55 whip, and 146 strikeouts. Before his injury, the 33-year-old from Florida was a frontrunner for both the NL MVP and Cy Young Award. With another setback to the Mets star pitcher, New York will have to turn to pitchers like Marcus Stroman, Carlos Carrasco, Taylor McGill, Trevor Williams, and Taijuan Walker. At the time of this recording, the Mets are 59-56 and half a game out of first in the NL East. The Braves and Phillies currently lead the NL East. Kawhi Leonard has officially signed his contract with the Clippers. The 2-time Finals MVP signed a 4-year deal with $176.3 million. The former San Diego State product opted out of his contract when free agency began and was expected to sign another one-year deal with LA. However, he stunned many fans and analysts by going the 4-year route. According to multiple reports, Leonard is eligible for a contract extension in 2023 or 2024. The deal was first reported by Yahoo Sports and Sham Sharonia of The Athletic and Stadium. Leonard was instrumental in helping the Clippers reach their first ever Western Conference Finals, although the 5-time All-Star did get injured versus the Jazz in Game 4. He missed the final 8 playoff games, and the Suns eventually eliminated the Clippers in 6 games. The 2020 All-Star Game MVP had surgery to repair his ACL this offseason and is expected to miss most of next season. They re-signed Reggie Jackson, the Clippers did, Nicholas Batum, and Kawhi Leonard. Serge Ibaka also opted in his contract, and they signed the former Grizzly and Heat Justice Winslow. If Leonard returns before the playoffs, the Clippers might have a shot at winning the first NBA championship. Before last season began, the Clippers signed one of Kawhi's best friends to a massive extension, Paul George. It was worth $190 million over the next 4 years. We'll see what happens with the rest of the season, but I would not be surprised if the Clippers made the Western Conference Finals again and maybe end up winning the whole thing. Former Sixth Man of the Year J.R. Smith has decided to go to college and intends to play collegiate golf at North Carolina A&T. Smith is a 2-time NBA champion and started to play golf about 12 years ago. However, he still has to wait for the NCAA to prove his desire to play golf at the collegiate level. Smith played in the NBA for 16 years. He played with the Hornets, Nuggets, Knicks, and Cavs, and he also played with the Lakers. Smith is now retired, but the 35-year-old from New Jersey was drafted 18th overall by the Hornets in the 2004 NBA draft. He went straight from high school to the NBA. He was one of the last players to do the one-and-done route. The 2-time NBA champion originally sent a letter of intent to play at North Carolina, although he decided to go pro instead. Smith knows the North Carolina area very well and is currently at the Wyndham Championship at the time of this recording. The former All-American high schooler credits his want to go back to college because of former basketball player Ray Allen and Phoenix Suns guard Chris Paul. This is what he had to say about it. Ray Allen kind of convinced me Wednesday at the golf event. We had a little golf trip in the Dominican Republic, and he was talking about some of the things he was doing about going back to school and challenging yourself for us athletes. I really took heed to it and decided to go back, and one of the best liberal study programs is at AT&T. Eventually, his ultimate goal is to go pro in golf. Smith plans to be very busy with college, golf, and raising his kids. It would be crazy one day to see the former NBA champion playing on the tour. Things can't be more crazier in college football right now. According to a report done by The Athletic, the Big Ten, Pac-12, and ACC met on Friday, August 13th to discuss a possible merger or alliance with the conferences. However, the report also said it could be just playing each other every year and still playing in the same conference. With the news of Texas and Oklahoma moving to the SEC in 2025, it's definitely put urgency in the conferences to make some type of move. Pac-12 commissioner and Big Ten commissioner most recently met, according to a report done by ESPN. The Pac-12 also met with the Big 12 recently. According to ESPN, the Pac-12 commissioner told them, "I've been in frequent and regular contact with all of the other A5 commissioners the last few weeks about the 4 or 5 complex issues that are facing our industry. Anything beyond this is just speculation, and I can't comment on it. The Big 12 right now looks like the big loser and could be the odd conference out. Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesley still believes there could be a conference they could merge with if they have no choice or if they have to. The next time the commissioners will meet is September 28th. According to multiple reports, the CFP community has met the last few times together and is thinking about another possible expansion of the playoffs. One thing is for sure, college athletics will totally be different in 5 years. The number 5 overall pick in this year's NBA draft, Jalen Suggs, has been ruled out for the rest of the Summer League. The former Gonzaga product hurt his thumb in a loss on Thursday versus the Celtics. In that game, Suggs had 6 points in 11 minutes. According to multiple reports, Suggs had sprained his thumb, and the Magic are playing the safe game with their up-and-coming superstar. Suggs had a solid summer league and was averaging 15 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, and 2.3 assists per game. The 19-year-old from St. Paul, Minnesota had an MRI on his thumb Friday. The Magic got a steal with drafting Suggs the 5th overall pick. After his first practice with the team, Suggs had this to say about his new team. "I wanted to come out there and be the icebreaker, be the one that isn't afraid to talk first, isn't afraid to tell a guy some adjustments to make, and ask them what they see and learning from what they do see." At Gonzaga, Suggs was a second-team All-American and helped lead the Bulldogs to their second ever national championship game. They were eventually defeated by Baylor. Orlando is certainly rebuilding at the moment, but the franchise is in good hands with young guys such as Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz, and much more. One of the greatest fighters to ever do it in the UFC is turning to a different sport. Khabib Nurmagomedov has decided to play soccer professionally. Nurmagomedov has signed with the FC Legion Dynamo. The club that the former lightweight champion is signing with is a third-tier club in the Russian professional football league. On January 24th, after announcing his retirement, Nurmagomedov announced another thing on social media that he was turning pro in soccer. There is still no word yet on what position he will play. It is just official that he's playing professional soccer in Russia. In January, he tweeted out saying, "Preparing for my football debut. I'm a free agent and ready to accept offers." AKA the Eagle, Nurmagomedov, was undefeated in the MMA. He went 29-0 and had wins against Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, Michael Johnson, and much more. The 33-year-old retired last year from the UFC and shocked many after defeating Justin Gaethje in October of 2020. However, he decided to retire because he promised his mother that after his father would pass away, he would not fight again. His father passed away last year because of COVID complications. After he officially signed to play with FC Legion Dynamo, he said it was his dream to play soccer professionally. We don't know how it will end up working out, but we all know the club will get a lot of publicity by signing the former lightweight champion in the UFC. And lastly, the Chicago Bears have signed veteran offensive tackle Jason Peters. Elite Royalty Sports, who represent Peters, told Jeremy Fowler from ESPN the news of the signing. Peters is now in his 18th season. He has played most of his stellar career with the Eagles. However, he was signed by the Bills in 2004 as an undrafted free agent. Throughout his career, he's been named to 9 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pro selection, helped the Eagles win their first Super Bowl in 2017, and was named to the NFL's All-Decade team from the 2010. He went to college at Arkansas. After the Bears signed Peters, head coach Matt Nagy stated he was brought in to compete for the left tackle starting position, despite his age. He is currently 39 years old. The Bears were expected to start rookie Tavon Jenkins, at the left tackle position, but he injured his back in training camp. With the signing of Peters, it definitely proves that despite his age, he is still coveted by many teams, and the veteran can be a mentor to the younger players. He also reunites with his former offensive line coach Juan Castillo. The Bears open up the 2021 season, at the Rams on September 9th on Sunday Night Football. And now on to our interview with the Bears, Birds, and Brews podcast. All right, I am pleased to be joined by Nabil and Asif of the Bears, Birds, and Brews podcast. How's it going, guys?
How's it going, man? Thank you for having us on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for being here. We're doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, especially less than a month is when football officially begins. Now, it already technically happened with the Hall of Fame game, but I was just glad to have football back, even though the game wasn't really that fun to watch. But again,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm just glad football is back. And again, less than a month, the Cowboys will be taking on the Buccaneers. But before we start talking about that, we'll also mention a little Oklahoma and Texas and just about the whole college football landscape at the moment. But before we start talking about that, if you guys want to talk more about your podcast, where we can find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you again for having us on. We're Bears, Birds, and Brews. We're a podcast that goes into craft beer, football. We do talk about Chicago and Atlanta sports a lot, but it's just a fun podcast about us enjoying craft beers, and sometimes we enjoy too many craft beers and yell about our sports teams. So it could be down to me talking about Jay Cutler or Mitch Trubisky, or Asif talking about 20-3. We're gonna talk about our lowest moments and highest moments at the same time.
Yeah. And I'll just add that, Bears, Birds, and Brews, at Bears, Birds, and Brews on social media, Chicago Bears, Atlanta Falcons Craft Beer. We're an Atlanta-based podcast, and Bill and I both live in Metro Atlanta. However, we were both born in Chicago, so hence it's a very organic development that we have on our podcast. It's all very organic. We have roots in both places, and we have love for both teams and both towns. And, of course, who doesn't love a nice cold craft beer also?
Yeah. Again, thanks, guys. Thanks again for coming on. But before we talk about the NFL, we haven't talked much about this, but the college football in a few years is going to look completely different. Of course, the big news a few weeks ago is Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. I was stunned that this is actually going to happen. It seems like there's a good chance the Big 12 might not exist. I think it will, but there's a good chance that it might not exist. But what do you guys think about Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC? And do you think it's a smart move?
Well, I think it's manifest destiny. I mean, we learned about manifest destiny like in 5th grade, right? To go westward. Well, that's what the SEC is doing. And, eventually the SEC will be every good college football team in the U.S. outside of Clemson. And then every year will be an SEC team versus Clemson. But yes, I think this is great for college football, great for the SEC, horrible for the Big 12. But I do think you're right. I don't think the Big 12 is going away, but it's not good for the Big 12. Asif?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the Big 12 does dissolve or evaporate, maybe it can go back to being the Big 8, which is what it was originally, even though they don't have Missouri anymore. But you can make it go from Big 12 to Big 8, or you can combine with a Pac-10 to become the Pac-12 or the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the Pac-12, whatever, just do all that maneuvering. And then lastly, as an SEC fan, it's great that we started with this because, like I said, we're an Atlanta-based podcast. So we are in the heart of SEC country with no championships to our names with the Georgia Bulldogs. However, as I went to Mizzou, actually, when they were in the Big 12, and now when I graduated, they moved to the SEC and they moved back home with me. I think it's fine. I mean, to be honest, I don't really care to see Texas or Oklahoma in the SEC. And to be honest, I don't want them to win either. It's cool that they're in. Great spotlight, great exposure, great revenue, all that stuff, and academically fine institutions. But I don't want Texas or Oklahoma to win the SEC championship ever. Like, I'll take Nick Saban winning 5 more championships before we see Texas win one or Oklahoma win one. And maybe even Georgia or Missouri might get some action too. But that's kind of my stance. Like, welcome aboard, but this is the SEC, the original SEC, and I want to keep it that way in terms of who's dominating the conference and college football as a whole.
I am curious, though, how the Longhorn Network is going to work with this, because I think originally the Longhorn Network was excluded from Big 12 revenue sharing. I wonder if that was negotiated in.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about the Longhorn Network, and I'm not sure. I should go check that out. I didn't do enough research on that, but yeah, I think because I know that's a huge money maker for Texas. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume though it would just go to the SEC, and I'm assuming Texas would get all the. I don't know if SEC would actually get any profits on that. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't think Texas is going to have that much success in the SEC. I mean, they barely had enough success in the Big 12, and it seemed like Oklahoma would win the Big 12 every year, and then they'd go to the college football playoff and just get smacked. But do you think Texas will ever get back to what they were, 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
I think Texas has had just a bad run with coaches not having like the right amount of like time. And with, college football, unless you're, Jim Harbaugh right now, no one has time. Everyone is like win in 2 years or you're out. And that's not how that's not how college football works. So I think right now they have, what's his name? Is it Steve Sarkisian or is it the other dude? Is it Steve Sarkisian at Texas? So I think that was like a panic hire, but I think they're going to be looking to hire someone new in about 2 years. And now that you're in the SEC, like they're going to be able to scout the best coaches in college football on a regular weekly basis. You're going to be seeing Alabama's coaches once a year at least. So, I think that is something that's going to possibly help them bounce back sooner. Is it going to be a long road being in the SEC? Yeah, it will be. But, it'll help with recruiting and it'll help with finding the best coaching talent to get the best recruits. This is what I think.
Yeah, I'll just chime in real quickly and say I actually kind of disagree with the bill, respectfully, of course, I'm a good friend of mine. But I disagree in that, Texas has always been a marquee program, right? Like they have Matthew McConaughey, they have, the live mascot. They have a 100,000 person stadium. They're in Austin. They're Texas Longhorns football. I mean, it is a marquee program in college football, no matter what. You asked, will they return to greatness? I don't know if Steve Sarkisian is going to get them there. I mean, there are high hopes for him, for people who he's worked for in the past. And then obviously with the boosters down there, I thought Tom Herman was on a great trajectory. But like Nabil said, it's like a 2 to 3 year thing. And if you don't get it done in 2 to 3 years, you're out, as we literally saw with Tom Herman. As for joining the SEC, I think it's actually going to be harder for them to win, to be honest, because now just to get to the national championship game, depending on how the conferences align, but just to get to the national championship game, you're going to have to beat Alabama and or Georgia. You have to beat Oklahoma, which you have to do every year. Then you throw maybe a good Auburn and LSU team in the mix, and Florida. Like, they made their path to greatness even harder by joining the SEC, whereas if they would have ran the table in the Big 12, I think they pretty much have a playoff bid automatically. And now, I mean, like I said, you got Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma in your way, and LSU occasionally. I don't think it's any easier for them.
I do wonder how this is going to impact the expansion of playoffs, because I think the playoff expansion happened with the expectation of giving automatic bids to the big conferences. And the automatic bid for the Big 12 would have either been Texas and Oklahoma, on a yearly basis. But, there could have been like a one-off with TCU or Oklahoma State, but normally it'd be Texas or Oklahoma. Now that both of them are gone, I wonder if they're going to reconsider how that automatic bid is going to work, because right now the SEC should have 3 automatic bids almost every year, but they're not going to get that.
Right. And so exactly like Nabil just said, I think that's a great supplement to the point that I just made, which is exactly what I was trying to say. And then the only other thing I want to add too is I don't think it does anything for them in terms of recruiting. They are, again, University of Texas, the Texas Longhorns. And as anybody who watches college football closely knows, like, Texas is one of the best high school football states in the country. So Texas didn't need the SEC to recruit. They never have, and they never will. I don't know if it makes things easier or worse for them in terms of recruiting, but it's also like a non-factor as far as I'm concerned, because they're Texas and they're a big time program, no matter which way you put it. And like Nabil just said, it's even harder to win there now. So again, it might hurt them more than it helps them, even though they are Texas.
It could be the revenue, but I'm not sure. The revenue would definitely be going higher. But yeah, I mean, any more thoughts on, the Texas and Oklahoma with you, JJ?
I just think that it was a bad move for both programs, because Oklahoma used to dominate in the Big 12 the last 5 or 6 years, or even, I guess, the 5, 6, 7 years. And I guess you don't necessarily need to play defense that much anymore, because you saw Alabama last year. Their defense was great and all, but they were driven mostly by their offense. So, I mean, I just think that Oklahoma and Texas should have stayed put, in my opinion. But unless they see something with the Big 12 that, of course, the Big 12 is not what it used to be, I just think it was a bad move. I kind of wanted to mention Oklahoma, but I kind of want to mention this before. Now that the Big 12 in 2025, they're going to have 10 teams. I wonder if they can stay alive, because I heard reports that Iowa State, of course, they had reports about them maybe joining the Big 10 if the Big 12 doesn't last. Kansas, I guess, had talks about going to the Big 10, which wouldn't make any sense in football. But if they stay to that 10 team format, if they can expand a little bit, get a few more teams, do you think a team like Central Florida, who's tried to move out of the American, and like a team like Cincinnati, do you think they would be good fits in the Big 12?
Central Florida, that's an intriguing one. I mean, yeah, I think if they get the opportunity, they should. Do I think it's gonna? Yeah, I don't see any harm in that, but it won't. They'll be, it obviously won't replace Texas or Oklahoma, but with like the recent, how they've been trending, and how they did the whole they're the national champions thing, it'd be a good, hot team to bring in. Like, it's a team that you can bring in that has gotten some noise, that does have a great fan base that could help with the missing revenue at that point. In Northern Iowa, they have like a great following for a long time. So those are two like, possible replacements, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of like, at what point do you have the integrity of the conferences and the division, and are you putting student ahead of athlete, or does it become athlete student, or just athlete and part-time student? Because in the sense of like Central Florida, okay, we have to go to Central Florida Saturday, then the other Saturday we got to go all the way up to like Iowa or Waco, Texas. Then you got to go down to TCU. Then you got to go to Cincinnati. Like, I mean, these are kids, they're athletes, they're students, they're not professionals who, hey, Lakers back to back, LA to Boston or whatever, right? Philly to Boston to, New York. So I think you have to be mindful of like, somebody has to play these games and logistics has to be involved. And Central Florida, while sure it's great for the brand and it's great for the revenue, and if they want to win, yeah, but then we're not in the business of college athletics. We're more amateur athletics. And I think, the name, image, likeness complicates a lot of that. So I think it becomes a can of worms that you don't want to go into. And like I said, I think the better thing would be to go back to a Big 8. Iowa State, you won out. Kansas, you won out. Okay, we just lost 4 teams. We're the Big 8 again, back to tradition. And then you can kind of do some fun things with that too, right? And you keep it closer to home. So I think that's the way. Downsizing is actually a better way to go, even though financially it might not pay off as much, which is, of course,
I don't see downsizing happening at all. That's too much lost revenue. But yeah, with the NIL, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But NIL, it doesn't really, at this point, we know it's not it's not amateur sports. It's professional football junior at this point. College football is professional football junior. It is pro sports at this point. I mean, the number one sport in the United States is football. The number 2 sport is college football. So,
yeah, I think you're totally right on that part. I just thought that Central Florida doesn't really make a lot of sense, but just because it doesn't seem like the ACC or the SEC would want them. And what happened a few years ago, I would have loved to actually seen them play a good team and see how good they were, and maybe giving them a chance to actually play in the college football playoff. And then on the other side, you have Cincinnati, which is kind of close to West Virginia. And they would make more sense, I think, than UCF. And you saw how good they were last year, and they took Georgia all the way until they. And so I just think that Cincinnati would make more sense. It was just kind of guessing to see what teams would fit the Big 12 most if they wanted to replace Texas and Oklahoma. But
at this point, I don't think college football needs geographical bounds. It made sense before when travel was a lot more difficult when college football first started. At this point, I mean, we have SEC teams all the way in Missouri. I mean, that's not Southeast Conference, but it is what it is. I won't be surprised in a couple of years if the only good team in the Big Ten is Ohio State still for a while. That SEC reaches out to Ohio State, and we just have an SEC championship every year, and that's the national championship. Which is and that's I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but I was thinking it could possibly happen.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like it just pretty much seems like right now college football is just going the way where the top 5 conferences or the top 4 conferences just expand and start their own league. Because the NCAA literally in college football does not have any power compared to what the SEC and ACC, pretty much Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, he's the commissioner of college football pretty much. I mean, he has that much power over over Mark Emmert, who is currently the NCAA commissioner. So it's crazy how college football is more controlled by the top 4 conferences, the Big 4. I guess you still consider Big 12 in there, but it's the NCAA clearly. Yeah, exactly. It's driven by money. So I guess we'll see what happens within the next few years. It's going to be crazy. That's for sure.
Just one last note on this. I do remember at one point on Mike and Mike, they were talking about, and this is an old thing. So this is how old this was. They were talking about how college football should remove itself from the NCAA to take the next step. That's the next step for college football, because all the college football revenue gets split up amongst the other sports. So the next step for college football to be able to actually grow more is removing itself from the NCAA, because at that point they have no regulations.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do you have anything to add to that, Asif?
Awesome. Yeah, no,
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I mean, I think the thought of going back a little bit, I think the thought of Cincinnati in the Big 12 or the Big 8 or whatever it becomes would be intriguing because they've shown that they can be competitive. The only irony, I think, is like, I don't know if you can ever secede, the irony of all this Southeast. And I don't think you can secede from the NCAA because these guys have to put a uniform on that is registered by the school and the branding and all that stuff. However, it's crazy because like we just like the playoffs are expanding, right? I mean, the playoffs did just expand. So like, again, it's all happening in the same direction. Like these, they're operating in silos when they're really running in the same direction. So I personally would like to see college football stay college football and then the NFL be the NFL, because I think there, of course, is undoubtedly a difference between those two, as we know. And yeah, the college football playoffs just expanded. So for you to expand your conference, like, why not just win your conference? Then Cincinnati could play in the playoffs. UCF could play in the playoffs. Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and LSU could all be in the playoffs, plus Notre Dame, even though they probably don't deserve it. Like, we're going to see the marquee matchups that we want to see for what we want to see them for, which is a title. So, that's also why I don't like college football as much, because I think it's way more complicated than it needs to be. And that's why I like the NFL, personally.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry about that, Asif. I totally messed that name up. So that's my bad. So let's go to the NFL now. You guys were mentioning you guys are Bears and Falcons fans. Let's first start talking about the Bears. They're going to have an interesting season. Aaron Rodgers is returning, but they now have a new quarterback, it looks like, in Justin Fields. But however, I think Andy Dalton's probably going to get the first few starts, and they do play against the Rams, which is going to be a really tough game. How do you see the Bears season going this year? And is there a chance they win the NFC North and at least make it to the NFC Championship game?
Ooh, NFC Championship game? That I don't think so. NFC North, I think a slight possibility, not as good as a possibility before Aaron Rodgers showed back up, obviously. That is, the Packers division to lose at this point. But, just going back to start, let's start at square one. The quarterback room, it's where where everything's going to start and stop at this point. As of now, Andy Dalton is QB1. We all saw the tweet. We know he's QB1. Do I think he's going to remain QB1 for very long? I don't think so. I think Justin Fields is lighting it up at camp. This week, we're going to see the Bears play Miami. And I don't think we're going to see much of Fields or Andy Dalton, because I think the Bears are going to put Nick Foles up to potentially try to get him traded to either the Jets or to the Colts. But, going on, next week, I don't know what the dress rehearsal game is going to be. Is it game 2 now or is it game 3? But whatever the dress rehearsal game is, I feel like you're going to see more Justin Fields than we're going to be expecting to. And week 1, probably we're going to see Andy Dalton start, but I won't be surprised if it's going to be a Deshaun Watson thing and Justin Fields comes out the second half. I think Justin Fields can lead us very far this year. Depending on how many games Justin Fields does play, I think we have a wild card, especially with the expanded wild card. If we made it last year, I think the wild card is a very good possibility for us.
Do you have anything to add to that, Asif?
Man, I'm excited for Justin Fields. I'm sure you probably know this, and I'm sure your listeners did too, but just to put it out there, like, Justin Fields is actually from Kennesaw, Georgia. So he grew up about 30 minutes from where Nabil and I are right now, even though we're in different parts of town. He was the #1 recruit in the country coming out of high school. He led his high school team, the Harrison Hoyas, to a state championship, and then he went to Georgia for a year, and he transferred to Ohio State, and then obviously he's with the Bears now. So the irony of him coming full circle, we're trying to get him on our podcast, and if he does, we'll send him over here to you. But no, I'm excited for Justin Fields. I think, like Nabil said, I don't think you can rush into it. Yes, he's going to play soon, and he should play soon. And what I told Nabil on our podcast at Bears, Birds, and Brews last week, which is it's only a steal if you use him, right? Like, you can't say, oh, we got Justin Fields for the 11th pick in the NFL draft, trading up from 20, but we didn't play him until 2.5 years in because we had Andy Dalton and Nick Foles, and we had to honor those contracts. Like, it's only a steal if he comes in week 3, 4, 5, and starts winning games, wins Rookie of the Year. And eventually, maybe, hopefully, within 6 to 7 years, he's playing for an NFC Championship, if not more, getting some division titles in there, getting a Super Bowl, experience once or twice in his career, hopefully. So I'm excited for Justin Fields because he's a local guy. I know he's good. I've seen him be good so far, and I wish him nothing but the best. Like I said, like Nabil said, I think you have to be very deliberate about how you do it. You don't need to throw him 0 to 100 week 1, game 1, snap number 1, right? You can ease him into it. I mean, if you want him to play 15 years, like sitting out 1 or 2 quarters in the first week of week 1 is not going to be a big deal in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's also, the brand new toy that's wrapped up. You're just ready to just let it go and see what happens.
So I'll just chime in real fast. This kind of reminds me of a Michael Vick situation, actually, because the Falcons were in the same situation with Michael Vick. Like, they had Michael Vick. He was the number 1 pick in the draft. He was electrifying. He's not the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. We know that's The Rock. But Michael Vick was the most electrifying man on the football field, and probably still is up until Patrick Mahomes took over in the last year or two. But even Michael Vick sat out for a few games until Chris Chandler eventually passed the reins over to him. So, yeah, it's a shiny new toy, but, dude, if you bump on the curb and your brand new car, taking it off the lot because you're so excited, what's the point of having that car if you can't even use it right? So that's just my stance on it.
Yeah.
I could kind of see the Bears situation kind of being like what they did a few years ago and I understand Mitch Trubisky was not a good quarterback at all, but I could see where, Mike Glennon, I think, started the first 3 games of the season, and Andy Dalton did the same. Yeah,
like first 6, I think. But yeah, that was rough. Andy Dalton's a way better quarterback than Mike Glennon was.
I can understand it. It just it seems like it's going to end up like that. But yeah, we all know Andy Dalton's a better quarterback than Mike Glennon was, and Andy Dalton's already proved it. I mean, he's played in the postseason a plethora of times. He just couldn't get the win. But yeah, I could just see Justin Fields not playing a few games. Unless Andy Dalton plays really well. I mean, you saw that a few years ago with, I think, when Joe Flacco was the quarterback in Baltimore. I think he started the first 9 games, and then he was eventually replaced by Lamar. But it could be something like that. I don't think Andy Dalton's going to have that much success. And if he is, I feel like Matt Nagy's he's going to force Justin Fields in there because, of course, they did spend a first-round draft pick on Justin Fields. So let's go down to the Falcons now. And Julio Jones is no longer there in Atlanta. And it seems like they're basically going to try to rebuild. It seems like, kind of, maybe not. But where do you think the Falcons, or how well do you think the Falcons will do this season?
Man, that's a $1 million question, right? I wish I knew. I was actually at the Falcons open practice on Saturday afternoon here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And the running game looks a lot better. I know you asked about Julio, but I'll say that the running game looks a lot better with Arthur Smith, and that's one thing Falcons fans can look forward to. That being said, also, what the Falcons didn't have the last couple of years is a decent running game that they can rely on, right? Matt Ryan's throwing the ball the most he ever has in his career, for the last couple of years. And so, Julio Jones becomes a premium product in that situation. But again, are you using him to the best of his abilities? Are you using him wisely? And that wasn't happening because the team was not balanced. So when you take that into consideration, I think you look at the Falcons and you say, okay, they have a new identity this year. Yes, they're still potent offense. Yeah, you have Kyle Pitts, you have Calvin Ridley. You got Frank Darby, who actually caught some really nice passes, including a touchdown in the open practice scrimmage on Saturday. And you got Russell Gage, who's been around for a little bit and has good chemistry with Matt Ryan as well. So they're still a potent offense, but they don't have Julio Jones, and everybody knows the saga of the Falcons for the last 5 years, right? The Super Bowl collapse, then the coach gets fired, then the star player gets traded, and now it's on the franchise quarterback to lead them to glory. So I think the Falcons are a more balanced team this year, and maybe not having Julio isn't the worst thing, because it's just a matter of your other weapons, have a chance to show out. And you did replace him with a guy like Kyle Pitts, who is literally bigger than every player on the third string team because they put him out there for some third string snaps at the end of practice, and he was by far the biggest one on the field on both sides of the ball. So I think the Falcons will be fine. It's just a matter of the fans have to be patient because, we deserve better, frankly. I'll just say as Falcons fans, as Atlanta sports fans, we deserve much, much better than what we've gotten. And the hard part is that with the new coach and the new system and all that stuff coming in, that stuff usually doesn't really click and be its most successful until at least year 2. So hey, they already owe me 1 to 2 Super Bowls, but the closest I might even come to getting a playoff appearance might not be until next season. So I think Falcons fans just have to be patient, even though, but at least you have Kyle Pitts, your shiny new toy, to throw out there in the meantime and hopefully keep some people happy. That's the goal, right?
And real quick before we forget about this, and this is kind of already old news, but where do you think, or what did you think about the whole Aaron Rodgers situation?
So I originally thought that Aaron Rodgers was always going to come back to the Packers, but I thought he was going to negotiate an opt-out for a way that he'll come back this year, but he would be able to find a way to opt out and, find a way to go to his next team next year, however he wanted to. And it looks like the Packers are trying to say, hey, come back. And if you still want to leave after this year, we'll figure something out. We'll get you traded, which the way it was reported by Shefty and everyone, it seems like the Packers are just hoping that everything gets fixed. And I still don't think that's going to happen. I think after next season's over, regardless, Packers could win the Super Bowl. I think Aaron Rodgers still wants out. I think too much damage has been done. Rodgers knew that he couldn't not play for them this year, but he knew he could make a lot of noise, and that's what he did. And I do think that he won't be playing for them the year after. I'm hoping he doesn't play for them the year after. But I do think he'll be on his way out. Where is he going to go now? I'm not sure. It looks like Denver is still primed to have a position for him to have him. Looks like Vegas might be primed to get him. Even a team like the Vikings, which would be extremely ironic if somehow Aaron Rodgers goes to the Vikings and finishes his career. But a team like the Vikings looks like they can, because I think they adjusted Kirk Cousins' contract. So I think they could even find a way to get out of that Kirk Cousins horrible contract and try to acquire Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if the Packers would trade him within the division, but it seems like the Packers gave him all the assurances that if you want to leave, we will send you wherever you want to go. So, I need Aaron Rodgers to leave the Packers. So that's kind of how I'm just waiting for him to be gone.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a matter of I don't disagree with Nabil in that if the Packers do win or have a lot of success this upcoming season that Aaron Rodgers is out. I think that's a foregone conclusion that he is done playing for the Packers organization after this season, no matter what. However, I do think they're kind of in a good place in that everybody knows what's going on, right? There's no chatter about this and that, and this report came out before the game and this report came out after the game. We all know going into this season, Aaron Rodgers is unhappy, but when he goes out there to play on the field, you don't have to ask that question after the press conference every single game. You already know the answer is, dude, I'm unhappy. And you go back to my very first press conference of camp. I told you exactly why I'm unhappy. We just beat the Bears 23-17 at Lambeau Field and are first place in the division. I don't need to talk about why I'm unhappy with this organization. I need to talk about Devontae Adams did a great job today. Aaron Jones did a great job today. Scantling did a great job today. The play calling was good today. So I think by putting all that stuff out there, he can focus on getting the job done. And if we know anything about Aaron Rodgers, that he's probably going to get the job done. I don't know. I don't want to jump too ahead of your segments. I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but my personal opinion, I think the Packers are going to be back in the NFC Championship game this year. And this is the year they finally break through, actually. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to say, you know what? Watch me. Just watch me do it. And whatever happened last year in the NFC Championship game about, we're going to settle for the field goal instead of going for 2 or going for it. No, dude. that's not happening this year because we saw what happened when we put the ball and the decision in your hands, coach. Let me do what I do and be Aaron Rodgers and do Aaron Rodgers things. Now, his other guys can't drop a wide open 2-point conversion in the end zone, right? That's not on the coaching. That's not on the quarterback. That's on the players on the field. But I think essentially it's all or nothing for Aaron Rodgers this year, and I think they're going to have a whole lot of something at the end of the season.
Yeah, and I think the only way Aaron Rodgers returns to the Packers next year if they make the Super Bowl. And I think it's not like the NFC, I don't think is as deep as the AFC because we all know the AFC is stacked with the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, even the Titans are really good. You got the Browns and Chargers that could be really good wild card teams or even teams that could actually win the division. But I really think the Packers, I think they have a good chance of making the NFC Championship game, but the only way I think Aaron Rodgers returns if they make the Super Bowl. And I mean, really outside the Packers, there's the Buccaneers and Rams that are really their biggest threat. But it's not like the AFC where there's a plethora of teams that are just so good. So I could see the Packers making the AFC Championship game. I just don't know if I can actually see them pulling out in the Super Bowl. And if Aaron Rodgers does get traded, I mean, I feel like he'd be in a worse situation because the Broncos and Raiders, the Broncos are decent, and the Raiders, though, they don't have a whole lot there either. So, I mean, a lot can happen in 1 year, but I just think that Rodgers at the moment is going to have to stay in Green Bay, and I think he eventually will get traded. I just don't know what team next year if they don't make the Super Bowl. And do you guys have an early Super Bowl prediction for this season?
Let's see.
Well,
yeah,
obviously
the Bears. Obviously,
Bears versus Falcons. That's why our podcast exists because we thought about
can't
this
even
4
happen,
years
sir.
ahead of the future. Yeah, right. Exactly. We preempted it. Right. No, well, yeah, that's true. But NFC Championship game weekend, it's on, you know? That game is just going to end in a tie, and then that's it. And then we'll go to, like, NCAA, college football, NFL junior, whatever. But, no, bring it back. Because Nabil can think about it, I'll just say, like I said, I think the Packers are going to do it. I think this is the year that they're going to break through and get it done because they are on the mission. And my dark horse, even though it's not really a dark horse, it's what I wanted to see last year. It's what I thought we were going to see last year. I think it's going to be Packers versus Bills, actually. I think that's going to be the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah,
that is possible, unless I'm wrong, Nabil. That is possible.
To be honest with you, after the Rams acquired Matt Stafford, I really like the Rams' chances. In the AFC, I mean, the Chiefs would be the obvious choice, but I really like what the Ravens are doing. If the Ravens can just if their receivers don't drop passes, I think they have a good chance of actually making the Super Bowl this year. But again, they seen their 0-3. Well, Lamar Jackson's 0-3 versus the Chiefs. So he's got to figure out a way to beat Kansas City in order to finally make that Super Bowl or at least win another playoff game. And again, as we're running out of time here, do you guys have anything else you want to add before we end the interview?
Everyone draft J.K. Dobbins this year in fantasy.
Nabil is our reigning fantasy champion. I hate to admit it, but I only say that not to stroke his ego, but to show you, to back up his statement. He knows what he's talking about. So draft J.K. Dobbins if you can. My only other thing is we're at Bears, Birds, and Brews. JJ, thank you for having us so much, man. This was fun. I hope your listeners enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it. And Nabil and I would love to have you on our podcast. You and Nabil have been coordinating, so we'll get that coordinated. But yeah, we'd love to have you on Bears, Birds, and Brews. And anytime you're in Atlanta, dude, I don't know where you are, but if you ever come down here, we'll go get some beer. Maybe we can go watch a game or something. So just let us know.
Yeah, I heard Mercedes-Benz Stadium is really nice, and I heard the concessions are pretty cheap, which is really cool, and you don't see that a lot of places. So, yeah, again, I'd love to come on, and again, thanks for wanting to come on. And again, you can check out the Bears, Birds, and Brews podcast. You guys are on. You guys are on
Apple,
like
Spotify?
Okay,
Apple,
everywhere.
Spotify.
Okay.
Everywhere, yeah.
And then for social media, is it just Instagram, Twitter? I mean, Facebook, maybe TikTok or something like that.
Instagram and Twitter, Bears, Birds, and Brews.
Okay.
Facebook as well. We are on Facebook as well.
Okay.
Expanding.
I'll put that link down in the description below. All right. Again, thanks for coming on, guys, and enjoy the season.
Thank you.
All right, let's wrap up the show with our segment Questions from Instagram, where I answer 3 fan sports questions. If you want to be part of Questions from Instagram, don't forget to fill in the STP Pod news or the STP Pod store that will say Questions from Instagram and type any type of sports question, and I will answer them and give you a shout out on the most recent episode. All right, the first question comes from @RickSands17. He asked, how many more years do you think Big Ben has left? To be honest with you, I think 1. And he probably should have retired after last year because that was a very abysmal finish. And of course, I understand he doesn't want to finish terribly like he did last year. But to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of hope in Ben Roethlisberger this year. Again, as I mentioned, I can't really see the Steelers making the playoffs, but I'd take him over the Cowboys. But I think this is his last year, to be honest with you. And with how good the AFC North this year is, they're better than the Bengals. I still think they're better than Cincinnati. However, with the way he finished last year, he's definitely not the quarterback. He just came off surgery, 2 years ago. I can't see it going well, and I think the Steelers are going to miss the playoffs, and I do think this is going to be Big Ben's last year. The next question comes from, do you think Kawhi Leonard will leave the Clippers next season? No. I mean, unless something drastic happens, we all know that he's going to want to stay. I mean, with what they did this year, they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals and were 4-4 without him. And imagine if the Clippers would have had a healthy Kawhi. They took the Suns to 6 games without him. I think they would have made the NBA Finals and maybe even would have won. They would have definitely taken the Bucks to 7 games. That would have been a great Finals. I know the last 2 years I've said the Bucks and Clippers, and I'm not sure I'm going to say the Bucks and Clippers this year, but I'm pretty confident I might say it again. But again, I think Kawhi is going to end up re-signing a 5-year, $250 million deal next season when next offseason begins. But I definitely think he likes the Clippers. It's home. It's where he's from. He's comfortable there. Yeah, he might not exactly trust the team doctors, but it seems like everything is fine at the moment. Now, again, thanks for the question. Thanks for the question at Zach Decker 1999. I forgot to give you a shout out on the first one, so sorry about that. But again, thanks for the question at Zach Decker 1999. The next question comes from at Barbecue Sauce Lover 688. Again, I like barbecue sauce as well, so again, congrats. He asked, how many more episodes do you think you'll do of season 2 before you enter into season 3? Well, I'd like to get all of season 2 done before Christmas, which that might be about 70 episodes. 80 episodes would be great, but again, it's only a weekly podcast. So I would love to get done as much as possible before Christmas, and I might take a few weeks off here and there. But again, I'm hoping to get done right before Christmas, and then I'll kind of have a Christmas/New Year's break. But again, thanks for the question at Barbecue Sauce Lover 688. And again, if you want to be part of Questions from Instagram, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at sports_podcast. And the story will be there. And again, just type in any type of sports question that you want. All right, that is it for today's episode. Thanks for watching and listening to the Sports Town Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and much more. Also, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Sports Town Podcast. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the right.